Hello there guys and welcome back to MotoGP race reviews on Motorcast, and today it's time to review the Sachsenring Grand Prix that took place yesterday at the Sachsenring, as I've just said, in Germany. And as Benny predicted just before the race, it was quite literally Honda domination, or Honda domination as you probably put it. But obviously what Marquez won, Pedrosa was P3, and just a quick thing, sadly Matty can't be here with us tonight because he did mean to record the highlights in the UK, but forgot to record them. So it's just me and Benny, but I'm sure it'll be quite alright. But Benny, obviously, Marquez won. Pedrosa was P3, and really, it's his second win. It's Marquez's second win all season, and obviously pole in the win. And you've got a question, a little bit like Hamilton in Formula 1. When Marquez is on it, on his weekend, 8 times in a row, obviously at Sachsenring, is he just simply unstoppable, especially at the Sachsenring?
Yeah, I think he is, He's just, I think that in MotoGP more than in F1, if you're on it, no matter what bike you're riding, almost, you can always, just drive away from everyone, just surprise anyone with basically almost any bike, any of the top 3 bikes you can. I think you can do that, and, Marquez just did just that, and, yeah, and, he had a good day, and in the end he won it fair and square.
Yeah, definitely. Would you say that Pedrosa was a little bit too conservative because he didn't obviously keep up, and I presume that he was holding back a little bit just to conserve his tyres?
Nah, I think Pedrosa just couldn't keep up, It was a much better weekend than previous week in Assen, but he just didn't look to have the same pace as Marquez and Folger, but he was still quite a bit faster than the guys behind, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about the man in second, Jonas Folger. Obviously, both Yamaha Tech 3 rookies have got podiums at the home race so far this year, and he had a great qualifying in P5, but to get up to P2, obviously for his first podium, is quite astonishing. And would you say that Jonas Folger was maybe driver of the weekend?
Yeah, I think I'd put him as driver of the weekend. Marquez may have dominated, but for 28 laps of the 30, Folger was right behind him and pushing him all the way. So, it's been finally one of those. I think it's been a breakthrough weekend for Folger. He just, he's showing himself a bit better than in Moto2, but this one was just the one that is gonna probably cement his place for next season. I think before the season started, a lot of people, including me, were doubting him, because he got a contract so early in the season and his results in Moto2 weren't that spectacular. But he's proven that he's got the talent, and I think there's more to come from him.
Yeah, definitely, I'd agree with that. I think they were saying on the BT Sport coverage, basically, that if he hadn't had a teammate like Zarco, he'd be just one of the drivers of the season, but it just turns out that because his teammate is so good as well, that he hasn't quite got that ride of the season. And talking about his teammates, just quickly, would you say that maybe Zarco's rise from P19 all the way up to P9 was a little bit underappreciated, and maybe on a different day it would have been more commentated on and, talked about?
Yeah, definitely. Something just didn't click right in qualifying. I didn't watch it live, but I watched it later. But it just didn't seem that comfortable on the bike in those conditions. The track just got a new surface this year, and nobody knew what to expect. So he just had a bad qualifying, and then in the race, he was steadily progressing through the field, and on a track that's very hard to overtake on these bikes. Very few straights, and even if the straight is there, it's still quite a short one. He still finished ahead of a lot of people who who qualified way ahead. He really had in the end Sunday's drive was really good in the end, but could have been. I think he would have been close to Folger if he qualified better. But that's if.
Yeah, definitely. Just quickly on the track race servicing, did you notice any big differences in the times or driving ability or anything like that this weekend?
Across all classes, I think the differences in time haven't been very noticeable, but it's been mainly resurfaced because of a lot of the bumps that were created through the years with all the driving, but I think that that was good for MotoGP riders, because on a MotoGP bike it's a lot more disturbing to hit a bump than in a four-wheeled car, for example.
Yeah, I suppose that. And obviously just cosmetic changes then, the resurfacing. And one of the people that Zarco beat in the end after qualifying so far down was Jorge Lorenzo, who, I hate uttering these words, but has been a little bit of an embarrassment, especially at the Sachsenring Grand Prix. Now, he qualified in the front row, I think in third, and went down all the way back to P11, and he's simply been shocking this season. There's no real other way to describe it, maybe apart from, I think it was Jerez when he got a podium. But Dovi improved from P10 to P8, not much of an improvement, still an improvement. And maybe could this humiliation, I mean, you've got to question it. Is it humiliation or not? I'm really exaggerating a little bit, but could it be the end of Lorenzo, only at the age of 30?
Yeah, I think you're exaggerating a bit, a great driver just doesn't disappear overnight. It's been a learning season for Lorenzo. I think, a lot of, for his whole career, he's been driving a Yamaha, which has constantly been one of the best bikes year in, year out. And, it's been his first change of team since he came into MotoGP. And the Ducati, I think we can all agree, it is a good bike, but it isn't at the same level as the Hondas and the Yamahas. But I think in the end the P11 was kind of not too surprising, but just shows that I think that even Dovi was only 8th, so it just shows that the Ducati just isn't an all-round bike yet, but that they've improved it quite a lot since a few years back.
Yeah, definitely. I think a few seasons ago, you'd really only have Ducatis being strong on Ducati circuits, as they were known. But obviously with Dovizioso doing so well in the championship, I think they've balanced that. And, of course, you've got to exaggerate a little bit to get the viewers enticed. But anyway, let's move on to Yamaha. A solid result over a tricky weekend for both drivers, particularly Rossi, and really just some good salvage points. And the question is, for these two, would you say that both of them are still comfortably in the championship fight, and will Valentino beat Maverick on points just simply because of his experience?
Yeah, I think they're both still definitely in the championship fight. This is the closest championship we've seen in years. In past years, there were maybe 2 or maybe 3 riders in it at this stage, but I think this year we've got like 4 or maybe even 5 with Pedrosa. But yeah, what can I say about I think that in the end Rossi might just win it because he's a bit more adaptable versus Vinales, I think that Vinales just, they've been, as I mentioned last week, they had a change of chassis. After a lot of problems with the 2017 chassis, the one that Vinales won a lot of races on, it wasn't exactly consistent as we've seen in Jerez and Barcelona. But Rossi just now with the new chassis just looks like a different rider, and I think that if we see a lot more rain affected races, Vinales he's been like Lorenzo in the wet. He just hasn't been on the same level as the top riders in the wet. So in the end I think it's gonna be Rossi, but the gap's not gonna be exactly big.
Yeah, I think we can judge that a little bit more obviously after the next few rounds, but at the moment would you say that Rossi's going to win the championship then?
Yeah, quite a tough call. It's still, we're only at around the halfway point in the season, and there's no clear favorites, so I can't really tell. I think that in the end the experience and is gonna prevail maybe, but depends on how the rest of the year goes. If somebody gets like a technical failure or each crash could, decide the championship right there and then there. So
yeah, definitely.
The one that makes the least mistakes is gonna be champion this year. So no matter who's gonna be out the outright quickest.
Yeah, we've already had obviously 5 winners in 9 different races, so we'll just have to see what the second half of the season brings, I guess. A little bit off the championship now, back down to sort of Aspar, who are up this high in the podcast because they had a brilliant result for our Alvaro Bautista. Great result for him, but Abraham was only P17 after being humiliated. Now, obviously there's no real point asking you. It's clear that Bautista did a good job, but there was a little bit of talk and gossip this weekend that Bautista's in talks with Aprilia. Obviously, after Lowe's hasn't performed particularly well, we'll talk about that in a little second. Do you think that Bautista will get that seat for next season?
Well, I think that if he wanted to, he could get it. Because, if Sam Lowe's doesn't start performing, he's probably going to have to switch teams. But I don't think he does want to change it. He seems quite comfortable in this team, and he's riding a Ducati, which, I think is still, at this point, and maybe next year, it's still going to be a better bike than the Aprilia, but I think he's still going to stay there. But, he did a great job, at the racetrack, which isn't exactly Ducati territory, so he deserves whatever drive he's going to get.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, definitely. So Aprilia themselves, obviously, Lowe's fell off yet again. We'll talk about them in a little second, but Espargaro, 7th place, beat Dovi and Lorenzo. Very impressive, wasn't it, from him? Yet again, outperforming the bike, Benny.
Yeah, as I've said, I think a lot of times this season already, that, he's just one of those riders that can outperform the bike, and I think that if he was on a Yamaha or Honda, he would have been probably in the championship fight, but he's probably doing the best that he can, but the Aprilia just isn't as competitive as he wants it to be, I think. But maybe in a crazy race, who knows when that's gonna be, one of those very chaotic races that's, the conditions always changing, on one of those I think that in the end he can finish on the podium.
Yeah, definitely, agreed. So Sam Lowe's, obviously a little bit of discussion about Sam Lowe's. The big question is, I don't mean to be too harsh, but is he not cut out for MotoGP?
Well, from what we've seen this year, he doesn't exactly look at it. There've been a few flashes of him riding very good, like in qualifying in Assen, but he just hasn't found. I think he just isn't comfortable on the bike in the end. As is with any racing series, basically anything that if you want to be quick, you need to be comfortable on whatever you're driving. Which is switching a bit to Formula One. Kimi is one of those drivers that, if he has a car that he feels comfortable in, he's gonna perform to the maximum of the car. But if he has a car which is very troubling for him, then he's gonna struggle a lot, And I think this is the case with Sam Lowe's. I think that if he were to drive, for example, a Yamaha, which is quite apparent, which according to Lorenzo has got a lot of traction and is probably one of the best bikes for rookies, I think he would have been a lot better, but on the Aprilia, he just doesn't seem comfortable, and which is hurting his performances a lot.
Yeah, it's a big shame really for a rookie, but hopefully those performances get better. We don't like talking negatively about any of our British drivers, but everybody gets the same treatment here. But on to LCR Honda then, with Cal Crutchlow obviously their sole rider. He falls back from the grid. A poor start from him, but obviously just signed his new contract before Assen. And not really much to comment on, just still doing well for Honda, consistent point scorer.
Well, I think that, he did a solid job, but I think I read in an interview somewhere after the race that he said that this race was worse than one of the races that he did well at and he crashed, I think that that shows that he was quite unsatisfied with how the race went. I think that, the new asphalt just caught him out a bit, As I think that it was interesting that the factory Hondas did very well, but all the other Hondas just fell back. It just seems that the new asphalt just caught a lot of people out, and it was a bit of a gamble for everyone, but they just didn't in the end get it right. But solid drive from him still.
Definitely, yeah, couldn't agree more with that. Pramac obviously they did with the Ducati team. Petrucci, fantastic qualifying, but falls back from the grid. And Redding was only P20. Talked about it a little bit from Honda there, but for Ducati as well, is it just a case of a poor general weekend for Ducati with, ironically, Bautista being the top Ducati in the rankings?
Yeah, I think it's a poor weekend, and it's kind of weird. All three of the 2017 Ducatis are 8 or lower, because Petrucci is also driving the GP17, and I think that it looked like maybe in some way the 16 was better suited to this circuit. But then there's also Redding who's been down there, but it just Petrucci's after qualifying, I think he was a bit surprised at how fast he was. But in the wet, it's the wet, so a lot more rider skill than the bike. But then in the dry, he said I think it was basically the same, as he had the same problems as in practice. The bike just didn't seem to suit the track, so
yeah,
that's it.
It's a shame, I guess.
Yeah.
But KTM, more positive for them. 5 points picked up, which is good for them. Smith was close to Espargaro, which is nice to see. And pleasing during the recovery of Smith. Obviously, he's still in bad condition. His finger doesn't necessarily look in the best condition, and I don't really want to describe that. So, a good for Bradley Smith anyway, and Espargaro obviously after picking up 3 and 2 points respectively.
Yeah, it's been quite a good weekend for them, even in qualifying, Espargaro made it to Q2, which is quite a rare appearance for KTM this season, but and they even had a wild card in Mika Kallio, and the KTM just seemed like a lot more at home on this track than it did on a lot of others, it looks like the chassis could be quite decent, but the overall power output just doesn't seem to be there. This is a track that power doesn't exactly matter because it's so twisty. So I think just the bike has just been, and I think they've been also found something in the setup that just makes the bike a lot better to drive. So I think that it's been a good weekend for KTM. Another race of progress, I guess. And soon we've got their home race, and hopefully they can bring some updates that are gonna push them a lot higher than they are currently.
Yeah, definitely. So now let's talk about Suzuki. There's a lot of controversy at Suzuki at the moment. With Iannone crashing this race, and there's rumours of a general lack of effort, then that means he might leave at the end of the season. And they're in big need, really, of a leader at the team. Because fair enough, Rins a good rider, but he's only a rookie. And really, I've just put here, poor Rins, because he's recovering after his accident. What's your general thoughts on the situation at Suzuki's? Because it wasn't a great weekend for them, and it's all going a bit pear-shaped in the team at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of weird this season. The bike just doesn't seem. The start of the season, I think after Qatar, I said the bike looks quite good, but since then it's just gone downhill very quickly, and I kind of doubt that Iannone isn't trying as hard as he can, but I just think that it's kind of a weird situation. Rins as a rookie isn't exactly showing. He's having a rookie season, on a bike that isn't necessarily the best, and he isn't exactly pushing Iannone to as much as he should be, probably if he were an experienced rider. So it's kind of hard to say. Just the bike they seem to have made a lot of wrong decisions in the development, and I think they changed the project leader on the bike development, and I think that there's something. The team just misses. They've got a lot of resources and everything, and I think that the team are just missing that that's something that that just something that's gonna tie the team together and make it give them that little something that they're missing, and just it just is missing. I think that I think it might be actually a None, as he has been kind of he isn't exactly one of the most charismatic and one of the most hardworking in bike development, I guess. I think they're just missing a rider that's gonna tie everything together.
Yeah, it's a shame, but I think I'd stay with who they've got at the moment. They've got two good drivers at the end of the day. Yeah. So let's talk about Mark VDS. The action, luckily, there's quite a lot of talking points down the field on our penultimate team, Mark VDS. Miller picks up a singular point. Rabat's in P18. First off, a step back for the team this weekend.
Yeah, they just didn't adapt to, like LCR Honda. They just didn't have the right settings or something. Just something that wasn't going right for them with the new asphalt, So I think Miller did quite a good job, but I've said this many times already this season. I think this is Rabat's last season in the sport. He just doesn't look at home on MotoGP. He's been quite handy in Moto2, but in MotoGP he's not at home on the bike, and it shows, I think.
So you were as surprised as me that apparently he's been poached by Pramac for next season?
Yeah, yes I am.
Yeah, I was very surprised though. That I thought that might have meant Miller, but definitely not. It was definitely Rabat. So what do you think they're trying there? Do they see something in Rabat that we don't?
Well, yeah, probably. I think it was also with Redding. On the Honda, he just wasn't exactly at home on the Honda when he drove the Honda with Mark VDS a few seasons ago. But on the Ducati, he looks a lot more at home. Redding's a bit of a bigger guy, and he just suits the Ducati much better. And maybe they're hoping that it's gonna be the same for Rabat. But if I were the team chief, I personally wouldn't give him a contract.
Well, that's Benny's advice for you if you're watching, the manager of Pramac. But I've got a bit of insight from you here because I don't know much about this rider. Mark VDS have confirmed Morbidelli. That's correct, isn't it, for next season? Do you know anything about him?
Yeah, he's been doing quite an amazing job this year in Moto2. He's been, I think it's about 2 seasons ago, he started getting the good results in Moto2, and last season he was also doing quite well, but this season he finally started, winning, and this season I think he won all but 3 races this season in Moto2. So on Moto2 he looks quite handy, and I think he even had a contractual clause that if he wins the championship, they're gonna give him a seat at Mark VDS. So he looks quite handy. Rossi says he's very talented, and I think he is. He's just very, very aggressive. A few years back, I think it was 2 years back at this race, he took Rabat out on the final corner of the race because he wanted to get through.
Well, he's learning from his master anyway, isn't he, with Marquez in Malaysia in 2015. But would that be the first VR46 rider in MotoGP? Obviously, apart from the man himself.
Yeah, actually, I think I'm not quite sure. I think that Simoncelli was quite close to Rossi, but this is probably the first one that's probably Rossi Academy. That's from a Rossi Academy. I think that a story about that he told the media was that a few years back, when he was still an unknown, his father knew Rossi's father, and his father asked Rossi's father if he could train on Rossi's ranch, and that's where it all started. And I think he is the first Rossi Academy rider to get through to MotoGP. But we'll see how he'll do. Not everybody who dominates the lower categories does well in MotoGP.
Very true. Yeah. Now, not to be rude to anyone who likes Real, but Baz was 19th and Barbara crashed, so nothing to report on them?
No, he didn't crash. He got a black flag.
Oh, yes, of course. I completely forgot about that. So, there is something to report on. What do you make of that? Just a miscommunication from the team, or was it just being a bit brutish by not serving the penalty?
I'm not quite sure. I think that it was just some sort of miscommunication somewhere. He did jump the start apparently, and they've got a dashboard system which tells the rider that they've got penalties and flags, basically like they've got also in F1, and they've introduced it for this, and I guess they've still not ironed out all of the problems. So I think there was just some sort of miscommunication there, so nothing really horrible, but it happens, and he missed the penalty and he deservedly got the black flag because of that. So,
well, bit of drama anyway to round up our last team. Now, before we go, obviously it's a summer break now. Real big shame for us MotoGP fans, but we're back on the 6th of August for the Czech Republic Grand Prix. And obviously last year, Cal Crutchlow won that race from Rossi Marquez and Loris Baz in 4th place. If that happens again, I will eat my hat. But
yeah, it was a
bonkers race.
Yeah, I think it was wet, and most of the riders thought that it was gonna dry out, and so they picked the softer of the wet compounds, and then it just didn't dry out. Cal had the hard tire, and he was just so quick. Yeah, after the start of the race, he lost a lot of time because of the hard tire just not being so quick at the start, but then. He was just so quick, so much quicker than everybody else. He just showed why he deserved to be in MotoGP.
Well, Cal came from 10th on the grid and Baz came from 17th, so certainly a grid ride. But anyway, enough about the 2016 Grand Prix. Round this off, what are your top 3 predictions for that race?
Brno is always a tough one to predict, I think. Depending on the weather conditions and, on the bike development. But historically Yamaha have always been very quick there, so I think I'm gonna go with a Valentino Rossi victory, and then joining him on the podium are gonna be Marquez and Zarco.
Ooh, interesting. You predicted Zarco for quite a few podiums this year.
One came through.
We will probably get a tally at the end of the year to see how unsuccessful we've been in predicting these things. My prediction, I'm going to also go for a Rossi win with the only change from your prediction being Danny Pedrosa in 3rd. So, there we go. That's a bit of a bold predictions, but oh well. So that's it for the MotoGP podcast from... I was going to say Sachsenring, but the Sachsenring. And we're back in a month's time, so it's going to be quite a while to wait. But I'm sure there's so many other motorsport podcasts that you can fill that time with, and other motorsports as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this first half of the season from us, either at the MotoGP podcast, and from me, Benny, and Matty. We will see you at the second half of the season. Thank you very much for listening so far, and we'll see you at the start of August. Goodbye.